conference and why the move to Texas.
Well, thank you, Kris, and thank you for hosting. This is absolutely terrific. It's a great place to be. It's almost the epicenter of college sports. You know, you have several conferences here. It's a great location. You know, a lot of our schools are in the area, which wasn't the case when we were in Providence, where the old Big East was, as you know. We also have a great office here, as you've seen. But also, the airport situation is terrific. It's easy for our presidents, ADs, SWAs, everyone to get here. Also, when you have a team here, it makes a big difference. SMU's here. I went to probably 4 or 5 football games last year, and I go to basketball games. And then all of a sudden, you're starting to see ADs come in, presidents come in. You're able to meet them, to say hello. We weren't able to do that, you know, in Providence anymore. And so consequently, it's been a great place to be. I think it's going to be a great place for our employees. It's a dynamic city. Dallas and Texas are growing, as you know, every year. So really pleased to be here, and we've got a terrific office. You know, it's not palatial. It's just very nice. And by the way, one little anecdote is when I was looking at buildings, it was a long, exhausting day. I think I'd looked at 8 or 9. And when I got here, someone said, by the way, your friends at the college football playoff want to say hello. And I said, they're here? And I didn't know. And I said, but no one's going to believe that. If we end up here, they'll say I planned it so I can just go upstairs and complain to them in person. Yeah. So I'm sure that's what everyone thought. It was a conspiracy.
Literally in the same building. Well, so much has changed in the college landscape within the last 2 months, especially in the last couple of weeks. So I'll give you the floor to give your opening statement.
Well, there have been some dramatic changes, clearly, Kris. Well, thank you.
Yep.
Well, first, I do want to welcome everyone to our 2021 Football Media Day. And I can say what a difference a year makes. We're not through the pandemic yet, but certainly we've made a lot of progress, and we have every expectation of playing, you know, all of our games this year. I know you're going to enjoy meeting our football student athletes and our coaches. I know you're going to enjoy Media Day, having interaction with them. But before I make a few brief remarks, I would like to recognize several individuals who've been influential in the success of our conference and also our football. Neville Pinto, the president of the University of Cincinnati, is our conference chair. Mike Fitz at Tulane he's the president of Tulane, is our vice chair. Our past chair, whom I had a strong relationship with for a number of years, David Rudd, president of the University of Memphis. Our Board of Governors representative is Rene Couture of Houston. Michael Kelly is the chair of our ADs group. Kris Pesman is our vice chair. Kris is from Houston, the AD. And I do want to recognize Scott Draper, who handles all of our football and did an unbelievable job last year arranging all the testing. It was a very complicated year, and he did a phenomenal job working with everyone. And I do want to recognize also Donna DeMarco, who is our COO, who kind of organizes everything for us. And without her, I don't think our conference office would function the way it does. So again, all these people have had tremendous influence and tremendous impact, and I applaud their work and I salute them. The first thing I want to mention is the pandemic. I'm extremely proud of the way we dealt with it last year. It was as monumentally as challenging a situation as we're ever likely to face, and I think we dealt with it in a cautious, straightforward, and common sense manner. We afforded our student athletes an opportunity to play. There were bumps in the road, but virtually all our student athletes wanted to play. We did it safely under strict testing and operational protocols. We had and we have, and we've kept it in place, an outstanding medical advisory group led by Dr. Greg Stewart of Tulane. I can't say enough about Greg's work chairing this committee. We met literally well over 100 times, probably closer to 200 overall. We're meeting often twice a week. We won't have to meet quite as much this year, we think, but nevertheless, I deeply appreciate and congratulate them on their important work, which, as I said, is ongoing. This year, though, is different. Vaccinations have made a real difference. But that said, you know, COVID is still with us, and with the very contagious Delta variant still a potentially significant problem, it's imperative that we vaccinate as many of our student athletes as possible. We want everyone vaccinated. We're doing pretty well. We're getting up there in numbers, but our ability to play a full, uninterrupted season may well depend on it. We will continue to test unvaccinated players, and those with COVID or in close contact will face contact tracing and quarantines. And that can potentially compromise a team's ability to play, which obviously we don't want. We've decided that we will not reschedule games this year. If a team cannot play because of COVID, it will be considered a forfeit. Now, that is our current position. However, we continue to monitor the CDC guidance and we'll react accordingly. Our medical advisory group meets next week, and we'll talk about the recent CDC guidance. In the meantime, as I said, we're going to advocate for universal vaccination for our student athletes. They have real incentives to get vaccinated, health and safety obviously being the primary one. And we as a conference also want to set a really good example for our campuses and for our communities with respect to the importance of vaccinations in eradicating this pandemic. With respect to CFP expansion, I wanted to mention that because it's very important to our conference. We're pleased with the CFP expansion recommendation, the CFP being the College Football Playoff, the recommendations put forth by the expansion working group. We're currently socializing this plan with our student athletes, our coaches, our faculty athletic reps, and others who are stakeholders in what we do. We're polling each school, and we're going to deliver the results to the CFP in mid-August, but I think we're going to find that our conference is supportive. We're especially excited about the meritocratic approach of the working group. The top 6 conferences without A5 AQs and without favor is good for us, but also it's good for college football. It's all FBS now under this plan. And we're going to work to dissolve the group of 5 label and the group of 5, it's been a protocol, and we're going to absolutely work hard to rid ourselves of it, because I don't think it's fair to anybody in the G5, and we want to consign this label to the historical dustbin where I think it really belongs. The kind of separation that it has entailed has been not been helpful to our branding and also to other schools in the G5. But we know that we've never felt we belong there, but we also felt that all FBS ought to be represented equally. We're pleased with the direction of the CFP and feel strongly that the outstanding performance of our top teams over the past several years, and UCF, Cincinnati, Houston, and Memphis have made New Year's Day games, but we have so many other teams that have contributed enormously to our success. And I think the approach that the working group took to this had something to do with how well our teams did and the pressure we put on the entire process. I do know that there is controversy regarding potential SEC expansion and the working group. I will not get into the issue of SEC expansion. It's not for me to comment. But if the CFP plan is a good one, and I believe it is, the current expansion speculation should not derail or delay the process. I see no reason for that. There was broad support for the CFP plan, and it should move forward. It creates greater opportunities for a wide range of teams, including our teams, who deserved a shot in prior seasons and obviously didn't have one. And it's a good thing to have that inclusion. It will also energize college football, I believe, as so many more teams will become relevant, and I think it's going to likely lead to higher ratings. So I'm all for the process moving ahead if, in fact, there is strong support for it as the CFP collects everyone's opinions this summer. As far as conference realignment is concerned, that's obviously the elephant in the room at the moment. And college football has historically been down this path, as you know, several times. As we witness changes and possible changes and even projected changes, we as a conference are in the strongest position we've ever been in, and we will consider and capitalize on every opportunity. Our schools are individually and collectively focused on our A6 status through competing at the highest level in every way. We've been doing that on the field with multiple top 10 football programs and on the court with Houston's run to the Final Four and Memphis's NIT title, just to name a few of our accomplishments. We have a long-term and strategic commitment with our partners at ESPN, and they provide us with the largest stage for our teams, and they provide resources which provide the stability and strength that we have now come to represent. Our opportunities with expansion and conference realignment may be bolstered by our stability and unity in a less stable and an evolving landscape, but I want to emphasize we are not looking at realignment and we are not out there attempting to take teams. While ESPN is a valued partner, I have to take a moment to address some accusations that have been made either directly or indirectly, against our conference. Our conference, and I say this categorically, our conference has never strategically aligned or plotted, if you will, with ESPN to influence conference structures. We wouldn't do that. ESPN has never done that and would not do it. We do consult with our television and business partners on issues related to our conference. Everyone does, of course. But any suggestions or statements that we colluded with ESPN with regard to the structure of any other conference is a completely unfounded and grossly irresponsible accusation. And that's all I really have to say about this at this point. With respect to the Autonomy 6 campaign, and what really matters to fans is the Power 6 campaign that we've embarked upon over the last several years. It's extremely important to note that campaign, which we described in detail and advanced in a letter dated May 7th that we sent to the chairs of the A5, the P5 conferences, remains a focus of all we do in this conference. The A6 initiative is separate from the college football playoff, but it is indirectly related, as A6 status certainly enhances a conference's college football playoff selection committee credibility, and we've seen that because we saw last year the way Cincinnati was treated, and I think but for the G5 label, who knows, they might have had a legitimate shot at the playoff. The A6 initiative, as we call it, is on a parallel track with CFP Expansion. Our conference's goal is to become an autonomy group member. We've never wavered in that goal. And we will continue to advance what we feel is obviously a critical cause for our membership. We've earned a seat at that autonomy table, and gaining it will solidify our position as an elite conference. I mentioned earlier that we've had a tremendous record of success on the field and on the court, and also our Olympic sports are extremely powerful. But we've had many teams in the final Associated Press and coaches poll standings. We attached what we called an Exhibit A to our letter to the A5 conferences. And we pointed out that on many occasions we've had multiple teams in the final AP and coaches polls, and 6 times we've had teams either in the top 10, one time in the top 11. American teams were ranked at least, in one poll, at least 225 times since 2013. And 10 of our 11 teams ranked at least once. And we've had teams multiple teams in the final playoff rankings most years, and we've had number 12 UCF should have been ranked higher. Number 8 UCF should have been ranked higher, and number 8 Cincinnati, I feel, should have been ranked higher. 6 New Year's Bowl appearances in 8 years, I think speaks for itself. 4 different teams reflects the depth of our league without question. We've had 52 wins against P5 teams in 8 seasons. We've had 3 New Year's Bowl wins, and we came very, very close last year to having a 4th. We have a 67-26 regular season record against G5 conferences since 2013, a 720 winning percentage. 72 future NFL players have played in our conference championship games. And one interesting fact is that in 2015, in our inaugural game, Temple played Houston. 27 players on that field, 27 players either played in the NFL or are still in the NFL. That's a remarkable statistic, and it shows the power of our league. 180 NFL players and 114 NFL draft picks in the past 8 years. So again, I could go on, and many times we've done more than a lot of the P5 conferences with respect to these, but I'm not going to single out any of those conferences. But it is clear that we have achieved at a very high level, and we deserve to be at that table in addition to having outstanding institutions in many large markets, and we do great work with our racial equality group. We do great work with our conference academic consortium, and in every way we belong with the A5 conferences. And the last thing I'll mention about that is our medical group did some fine work. They were tracking on the myocarditis issue well before anyone else, and had they had some input into those A5 discussions, which we initially were not a part of, I think we might have had some impact in terms of whether other conferences decided to play. Ultimately, who knows, because they had their own reasons for not playing. But we felt strongly that we could play safely, and I think they made a huge contribution, and I think it would have been useful for the overall A5. Finally, as I close, and again, I look forward to a great media day today. We're, again, thrilled to have Kris with us and Rene. This conference is always going to do what's in its best interest. We're a strong conference with a strong brand. We have a membership committed to excellence on and off the field and court. We're aggressive in our goals and ambitions, but with respect to realignment, the way we look at it is if there are schools interested in us who would enhance our brand and be a good cultural and competitive fit, then why wouldn't we consider them? What happens down the road, whatever happens down the road, we're going to continue to focus on growth and excellence and continue to compete at the highest level of intercollegiate athletics, which we have always done from the very outset of this conference. This conference is, as I said, proud of its achievements, but we're not satisfied by any means. There's much more to accomplish, and we're going to remain steadfast in our mission to provide our student athletes with the highest level of competition and the highest level of support in their academic and other endeavors. So again, please enjoy Media Day with our student athletes and coaches. I think you'll enjoy meeting them and talking to them and getting a sense of how our season is going to go. And again, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Commissioner. We will now open the floor up for media questions. And as we do this virtually through Zoom, Chuck Sullivan from the conference will navigate and call on the media members for their questions.
Great, thank you, Kris. We'll get started with questions. We'll go with the first one from Ralph Russo. Ralph, if you can unmute yourself and feel free to ask your question.
Hi, Mike. Can you hear me okay?
Hi, Ralph. Yes, I do. Thank you. Good to see you, Ralph.
You know, you addressed a lot of the realignment stuff, so I don't necessarily want to make you go over everything again. But with this type of movement, it does seem to make sense that, you know, other conferences might be looking toward the American, and the American might need to, you know, maybe play some defense. Have you had discussions in your conference about how to best protect yourself? In other words, why stay? Have you had to have that meeting with your ADs about why it would benefit them to stay with the American as opposed to possibly going elsewhere, specifically to the Big 12?
Yeah, absolutely, Ralph. We've discussed with our membership. You have to, obviously, what our strategic vision is and why it would be wise for them to stay in this conference, which is a growth conference, which is a conference that's strong and stable. You know, I think instability is a real concern here. If a conference isn't stable, then who knows what its future is, whereas this conference is. And we think that we've got a great future here. And so, yes, we've talked about, you know, our teams and why, you know, why they should stay. But again, I think for the most part, though, we've talked about what our future is. You know, we've been cohesive. You know, one never knows what's going to happen. But, you know, we at this point, if you know, one of the concerns we have is, you know, we obviously have a great conference. We know that, and with all the, you know, the things swirling around now, we don't know what's going to happen. So we just want everyone, you know, to you know, step back, you know, look at the situation, and we're basically staying calm and just analyzing the situation, Ralph. That's really what we're doing at this point.
And a very quick follow-up, and it's very specific, so I don't know how much you'd be able to actually answer it, but have any schools from the Big 12, the 8 schools that appear to be in the process of being sort of left behind by Texas and Oklahoma, have any of those schools reached out to the AAC about possibly joining the league or having a landing spot if that conference falls apart?
You know, Ralph, I would say, you know, I have not reached out to anyone at the Big 12, but we never talk about whether, you know, anyone reaches out to us. And again, I just don't want to even discuss it. I've observed recently that other commissioners are hinting, you know, at adding teams, and some are even more than hinting. We don't discuss these things publicly, Ralph, and I think I would really leave it at that.
We'll take the next question from Andrea Adelson with ESPN, please.
Hi, Mike. Good to see you.
Hi, Andrea.
As a follow-up to what Ralph asked, you said you believe the conference is strong and stable, and I'm wondering why you believe that at this point, considering a decade ago you were part of a conference that ended up not being able to continue on as a football playing member and ended up becoming the American.
Well, that was an unusual situation years ago, Andrea. You know, we had a very interesting hybrid conference at the time with a lot of small basketball schools that really didn't have anything in common with our football schools. And ultimately, along with some realignment. The Big Ten took one of our schools, the ACC took one of our schools. Things started collapsing, but we quickly reinvented ourselves, added a few teams, and it's our record, Andrea, of competitive success and the ability of our schools to get tremendous exposure from ESPN and all platforms. We've had we have a new TV deal, which is much more lucrative than our recent one, and also gives us great exposure. We're on the cutting edge with ESPN Plus and other platforms. So I think it's just night and day between now and 8 years ago. I don't think there's any question about it. Now, anytime you talk about stability, you never know what can happen down the road. So you don't want to overdo it. But what you can clearly see with the American is a strong and a stable conference that's had tremendous success. Now we're fighting hard, as you know, to be an A5, and I think that's the last piece that would really put us in a great position. But we'll see where things go. We're very, very happy with the progress of our conference. We think we've got a group of great schools that, by the way, early on may not have had as much in common as they do now. Having played together for a number of years, having developed that kind of camaraderie that comes with not only getting to know each other, but having great success and having great collective success. I think that's really helped our conference brand and helped our cohesion.
We'll take the next question from Dennis Dodd with CBS Sports, please.
Mike, do you support the 12-team playoff as currently proposed?
I do, Dennis. I like it because it gives more opportunity to more teams. It doesn't end up causing anyone, in all likelihood, to play more than 16 games. Some will only play 15. Some will play no more games than they would have played anyway with a bowl game that they probably wouldn't be playing if they're in the playoff. But I really like it, Dennis, primarily because it gives conferences like ours and teams in even P5 conferences who haven't had a chance to compete in the playoff, gives them an opportunity, and no one will ever convince me that some of our teams couldn't have competed and done really well and even possibly won a national championship. We've had some, outstanding teams, especially, you look back at that undefeated UCF team in 17, which beat Auburn, which also had beaten Alabama that year, and also had beaten Georgia, I believe. And so consequently, we feel that the 12 teams creates opportunity, and that, I think, is the key. Also, Dennis, I think what we've seen, the playoff is getting a bit stale. When you have the same teams over and over again, it's a real issue. And we saw it with the ratings this year. Yes, COVID dominated and did affect ratings, but you saw two marquee teams in Ohio State and Alabama, and we didn't get the kind of ratings we would normally get. And I think what this does, it will energize college football. I think you'll have tremendous interest. You might have 2 or 3 dozen teams that actually have a legitimate chance at the playoff. And as the season goes on, October and November will have far more meaningful games than they do now. If you only have a few teams that are likely to be in the 4-team playoff, maybe fans tend to lose interest in their teams or in college football generally. And that's obviously not a trend, that we want to embrace. Also, I think you'll see a lot more interest in the championship games. They'll almost be like quasi-playoff games leading into because conference championships are really, emphasized in this plan. And I, the other thing about the plan, Dennis, in addition to, I think, raising ratings around college football, is that it's a meritocratic plan. It really does treat everyone equally without favor. Sure, the selection committee has a lot to say about this. We know that. But still, the top 6 conferences, not the 5AQ conference, the automatic qualifier conferences, the A5 conferences. No, it's the 6 best conferences. And last year, we in the Sun Belt would have been in. So and obviously it was an unusual year last year. But the point is, anything can happen down the road. And the other thing that we really like about this plan, Dennis, is it equalizes FBS. And while yes, some are more equal than others, and certainly, the playoff committee has a certain view, and we've been, kind of fighting that perception for a while. It does treat everyone equally in terms of the way, the plan is outlined, and I think that's really important because the G5 label has been, harmful to us. we want to see it go. We want to see all FBS treated equally. And I think that's another important part of this plan.
And a quick follow-up, is it in the Americans' best interest for consolidation of conferences? In other words, if that happened, the American would move up a spot theoretically in pecking order in this proposed playoff and give you guys basically in a short spot the way you're playing right now.
Dennis, we don't have an opinion on that. In the end, it's up to other conferences to do what they do. We're concerned about our conference and being competitive and being at the highest level, and we think we can break into that group regardless of how many are in the group or who are not in the group. And essentially, it's about us. Whatever those conferences do, it's their own business. Now, if there's consolidation, then there's consolidation. But we're going to be judged on the merits. We're going to be judged on how well we're doing. And I think on that basis, we deserve to be in there now. I don't think there's any question about it.
Okay, we'll take our last question here from Matt Murschel from the Orlando Sentinel. Matt, if you can unmute yourself and go ahead.
Hey, Mike, how are you doing today?
Hi, Matt. How are you doing? Matt, do you have a bow tie today?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Oh, good. Excellent.
You talked a little bit about, obviously, with the pandemic and some of the protocols the league is looking at. Are those protocols include multiple testing and things like you did last season, or is there anything that you're going to be doing new this year?
Matt, first of all, we won't be doing quite as much testing. We won't have to do the 3 tests, a week that we did last year. On the other hand, we will test unvaccinated players. Our plan right now is not to test vaccinated players. And again, our medical advisory group will meet next week to discuss some of the new CDC concerns and guidance. But the plan would be obviously to incentivize vaccinations, without question. And so consequently, in terms of mask wearing and things of that nature, we'll leave it up to the local authorities. But we think that we can relax some of the protocols if, in fact, we can get our teams to the 90 to 100% vaccination rate. And I think we're getting close to that with a lot of our teams. And our coaches have made it a huge issue to have their teams vaccinated. I'm really proud of what they're trying to do. And this is in their interest, and it's in everyone's interest, to get vaccinated. But yes, we will have some different protocols. We're not sure yet, ultimately, because it's a changing situation. The Delta variant has obviously caused us to have to review certain things. But in the end, we think that we've got a pretty good chance to get everybody close to fully vaccinated, if not fully vaccinated, and obviously to have a successful season.